Band of Brothers depicts Easy Company commander Norman Dike as an incompetent coward who freezes up at Foy. But did you know that, according to a fellow soldier who was there, that's not what actually happened? In this video, I'm going to reveal the real reason why Norman Dike was replaced by Ronald Speirs during the attack on Foy, as well as explain Dike's acts of bravery during the war that led to 2 Bronze Stars for valor in addition to 2 Purple Hearts, which significantly contradict his depiction in the series. Norman Staunton Dike Jr. was born on May 19, 1918 in Brooklyn, New York, the son of New York State Supreme Court Judge Norman Dike Sr., who was well known in the New York City social scene. Norman grew up in New York City, and in the 1920s, his family lived within walking distance of the family of fellow future veteran and Yale alumni Lewis Nixon. In fact, Norman Dike's parents and Lewis Nixon's grandparents knew each other. According to newspaper reports unearthed by the Tumblr blog Bleeding Coffee 42, they were at some of the same parties and social events, even sitting at the same table. In his teenage years, Norman Dike attended the prestigious St. Paul's School, a boarding high school in Concord, New Hampshire that boasted famous alumni like media mogul William Randolph Hearst. After graduating from St. Paul's in 1937, he headed to college at his father's alma mater, Brown University in Rhode Island. His father and his mother Evelyn divorced in 1939, just shy of his 21st birthday. His mother remarried to a man from Thompson, Connecticut, and Norman is listed as having been a resident at his mother's home there. After graduating from Brown in 1941, Norman entered Yale Law School in the fall of that year, but he wasn't there for long. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Norman enlisted in the Army in January 1942. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in under 4 months, a relatively fast track, but this was likely due to the fact that the U.S. was now in the war. He was attached to the 101st Cavalry Regiment at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and he attended cavalry school at Fort Riley, Kansas. On June 20, 1942, when Norman was 24, he married a 22-year-old New Jersey socialite named Barbara McIntyre, the daughter of banker William McIntyre. The ceremony was held in Barbara's hometown of Englewood, New Jersey. Norman and Barbara had a daughter, Robin, born on March 23, 1943. Norman had been promoted to first lieutenant in December 1942. He went to intelligence school in early 1943 at Camp Ritchie in Maryland. He volunteered for the paratroopers and earned his jump wings at the U.S. Army Parachute School at Fort Benning, Georgia. He was assigned to the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division, and headed to England about 6 weeks before D-Day, saying goodbye to his wife and 1-year-old daughter. In England, Norman Dike became the Assistant Regimental Intelligence Officer, or S2, by spring 1944 and jumped into Normandy on D-Day as part of the regiment's headquarters company. In a June 27, 1969 interview with the Geneva Tribune that was unearthed by the Tumblr blog Bleeding Coffee 42, he described his experience fighting in Normandy. Dike had landed 5 or 6 miles from his objective. In under 15 minutes, he had located other paratroopers and they amassed a group of 29 men. However, they had no radio contact and were cut off from command. As they advanced toward Carentan, they came under fire from German soldiers, including German paratroopers, and they took casualties. "We had wounded," Dike recalled, "and in the situation we were in, this posed embarrassing and painful problems. We bandaged our friends, whom we then hastily sheltered, but no ambulance, not even medics." Their small group of men remained without communication for 3 days and 2 nights. "We never lost morale and managed to disrupt several enemy positions, destroying equipment, including 3 trucks," said Dike. They also encountered a German tank unit. As they moved toward Carentan, they used the almost impenetrable Normandy hedgerows as camouflage. He recalled that the prisoners they took caused them considerable trouble, and he said that the welcome from the French locals wasn't exactly enthusiastic. "Frankly, it was reserved," said Dike. "You have to understand these people, most of them old or very young. They didn't get along too badly with the Germans, who bought their butter in Calvados. Before showing their joy, they waited to verify that the liberation was successful and that the occupiers weren't likely to return in a fury." On June 9th, Dike handed their group in Normandy over to a higher-ranking officer, and on the 10th, the battalion began to be reorganized in quarantine. A few months later, in September 1944, Norman Dike jumped into the Netherlands during Operation Market Garden. He was wounded twice while fighting in Holland, earning him at least one of his 2 Purple Hearts. He also earned his first Bronze Star for his heroism as part of the 101st Airborne Division at Uden, Holland, from September 23 to September 25, 1944, when he organized and led scattered groups of parachutists in the successful defense of an important road junction on the vital Eindhoven-Arnhem supply route against superior and repeated attacks while completely surrounded. In early November 1944, Norman Dike was an officer at division staff who, according to Dick Winters, was the favorite protege of somebody at regimental headquarters who felt that he needed frontline duty. Dike was transferred from headquarters to Easy Company and took over from the more experienced and well-respected commander of the company, Moose Heiliger, who had been wounded in a friendly fire incident that took him out of the war. It's worth noting that Norman Dike was supposed to take command of Easy Company in October 1944 instead of Moose Heiliger, but there was a delay in Dike arriving, and Heiliger was assigned command during the interim. Heiliger assumed command on October 12th. It's likely that the wound that Norman Dike sustained on October 9, 1944, was the reason for this delay. We catch up with Lieutenant Norman Dike in Band of Brothers in the weeks after he took over command of Easy Company. In the series, specifically in Episode 6, titled Bastogne, and Episode 7, titled The Breaking Point, we watch the then commander of Easy Company, Norman Dike, hide out in his foxhole near Bastogne and repeatedly remove himself from the front line, presumably to retreat to the rear area headquarters that offered relative warmth, food, and comfort, especially when compared to the brutal conditions in the Bois-Jacques. It's true that he'd been nicknamed Foxhole Norman. However, while this series makes it look like him telling the men he has to go talk to regiment is an excuse to come off the line, the real Norman Dike was likely pulling double duty at the time because they were short on bodies at Regimental HQ. It's certainly possible, if not likely, that he was going back to the rear because he still had work to do there. Things culminate in the series when Dike's incompetence and cowardice is put on full display when he's depicted as panicking and falling apart during the January 13, 1945 attack on Foy, Belgium, which results in Dick Winters ordering Ronald Speirs to replace him in the middle of the assault. This depiction of Dike is the result of author Stephen Ambrose, who wrote the book on which the series was based, relying almost solely on what he was told by a handful of the men, including Dick Winters and Carwood Lipton, who both had unfavorable opinions of Dike. In the series, Carwood Lipton and Ronald Speirs shine as the heroes during the Battle of the Bulge, while Norman Dike is seen as the villain who constantly abandons his men, puts them at risk, and then falls apart during the attack on Foy. In reality, while some of the men, including Carwood Lipton, recalled that Dike had indeed fallen apart at Foy, Easy Company veteran Clancy Lyle stated that he saw firsthand that Dike had been shot in his right shoulder near a haystack, which is the real reason he stopped fighting, not because he had a nervous breakdown. The advance grinding to a halt and Winters being unable to reach Dike on the radio was possibly due to the fact that Dike was going into shock from the wound, or in the least was significantly incapacitated. A medic eventually helped Dike to the rear after he'd been replaced by Ronald Speirs. Dike survived the wound. As he recovered and more replacements arrived to fill the shortages, 26-year-old Norman Dike returned to his staff work at the 506th Regimental Headquarters, and Ronald Speirs officially became Easy Company's commander. Dike became an assistant operations officer and eventually an aide to General Maxwell Taylor, the commanding general of the 101st Airborne Division. It was a highly sought-after assignment that was given to junior officers who'd shown promise. It's not in line with the depiction of Dike we see in Band of Brothers. In real life, Norman Dike performed a number of acts of heroism that further contradict his characterization in the series. He received 2 Bronze Stars for valor. He was awarded a 2nd Bronze Star for his action at Bastogne when he personally removed from an exposed position in full enemy view 3 wounded members of his company while under intense small arms fire on January 3, 1945. That's the same day of the shelling that severely wounded Joe Toy and Bill Garnier, which resulted in both men losing a leg. However, on this same day in the series, Dike is portrayed as a coward who abandons his men. He tells Donnie Wahlberg's character, Carwood Lipton, "You get things organized here, I'm gonna go for help," before fleeing to safety, which contradicts the heroism described in his Bronze Star citation. The description of Dike fleeing from the line at the conclusion of the engagement was told by Carwood Lipton in Stephen Ambrose's book on which the series was based. According to Lipton, it happened after the shelling ceased and he came out of his foxhole. "I can still hear him with that deep voice of his," Lipton told Ambrose. "He was about 25 yards away, without his helmet or a weapon. 'Sergeant Lipton,' he yelled to me, 'you get things organized here, and I'll go for help.' And with that, he left." Ambrose omits from his book Dike's heroic actions that day, which led to his Bronze Star. More than likely, Ambrose relied on what he was told by Lipton and Winters and never bothered to do enough research to discover Dike's Bronze Star citations or Purple Hearts. Accounts of Norman Dike's real-life performance vary depending on the source. Men like Dick Winters, Carwood Lipton, Bill Garnier, and Babe Heffron all talked negatively about Norman Dike. "He was not a combat leader," said Lipton. Bill Garnier summarized Dike's lack of experience by saying, "It was like sending a boy to lead men. That's what it amounts to." Babe Heffron stated, "I don't think he was a coward. I just think he was a bad leader. He was scared to see men get killed. He was one of the guys who couldn't lead men. And some officers who could lead couldn't hold a glove to Bill Garnier and the rest of our non-coms." Unlike Winters, who had led Easy Company from the front and was able to make calculated decisions on the fly, according to some of the men, Dike hesitated, appeared indecisive, and clearly lacked strong leadership qualities. Some of the veterans also stated that Dike lacked combat experience or had none at all, and this is conveyed in Band of Brothers. However, in reality, as I've indicated earlier, Dike had significant combat exposure, including in both Normandy and Holland. He also completed a total of 35 jumps, including 2 in combat. For Band of Brothers to entirely omit Dike's acts of heroism in battle and instead falsely paint him as an inept coward who is replaced when he freezes up in combat is beyond reprehensible and is a dishonor to the man and his service. His Bronze Stars and Purple Hearts that he earned speak volumes for his courage in spite of his shortcomings as a commanding officer. His 1989 obituary in the Norwich Bulletin states that Dike also earned a Silver Star in addition to his 2 Bronze Stars, but I have yet to be able to find any other sources that corroborate that. The real Norman Dike's service didn't end with World War II. He stayed in the military as part of the reserves, and he served in the Korean War. He finished his law degree from Yale Law School in 1947 and retired from the military a decade later in 1957 as a lieutenant colonel. He was appointed U.S. Commissioner in Japan from 1950 to 1953. He also worked for the CIA for a few years. As a lawyer, he was a member of the bars of New York, Connecticut, and the District of Columbia. His marriage to socialite Barbara McIntyre only lasted a few years before it ended in divorce shortly after the war. Barbara would remarry in February 1948 to a former Royal Air Force captain. It's possible that Dike's marriage broke down during the war, since 2 of the only known photos of Dike are of him with an English woman at Littlecote House while working at regiment. Easy Company veteran Ed Shames included one of the photos in his book with a description that the woman was Dike's English girlfriend. In the 1950s, Norman Dike met and fell in love with a woman who was 10 years his junior named Catherine Pochon, who was born in Winchester, Virginia, but had spent some of her younger years in her father's home country of Switzerland. Like Norman, she had also been through a divorce. Norman and Catherine married on March 12, 1957, in Warren, Virginia. Norman had been working in Santa Fe, New Mexico as vice president of the United Western Minerals Company, a uranium mining company. He had gone to New Mexico in 1954 to prospect for uranium during the post-war uranium boom. In 1959, Norman and Catherine relocated to Catherine's father's home country of Switzerland, where her father, Alfred, was the director of the Conservatory of Music in Lausanne. Norman became a permanent resident of Switzerland the following year. Norman and Catherine had 2 children together, a daughter, Deborah, and a son, Anthony. While there are no publicly available photos of Norman Dike's wife, Catherine, interestingly, I did learn that Catherine Dike was a prominent collector, historian, and expert in antique canes and walking sticks. She had amassed a collection of over 1,300 canes and even wrote several well-known books on canes and walking sticks, including Cane Curiosa, From Gun to Gadget, and Canes in the United States. Norman Dike would live in Switzerland for the rest of his life. He became the president of the Sophidine Company there, which undertook the reconstruction of the Grand Casino in Geneva. He also had a law practice. Ironically, at one point in the 1970s, he was living in Geneva about 5 minutes away from Carwood Lipton, who had relocated there for his job as an executive in the glass industry. There's no report that the two ever reconnected. Norman Dike passed away at age 71 in Rolle, Switzerland, on June 23, 1989, after battling a long illness. He was survived by his wife, his 2 daughters, his son, and 3 grandchildren. His body was brought back to the States, and his funeral was held in Thompson, Connecticut. He is buried at the West Thompson Cemetery. If you've spent any amount of time researching Norman Dike online before watching this video, then you almost certainly stumbled across the controversy around him on forums like Reddit. Some have questioned whether Norman Dike was shot at Foy, as Easy Company veteran Clancy Lyle claimed he witnessed. They point to an article in a local newspaper, the Brooklyn Citizen, which was published on December 13, 1945, after the war had ended and Dike was back at Yale Law School. The article describes the heroic actions that led to Dike's 2 Bronze Stars. It also states that Dike had a Purple Heart cluster and he was wounded twice in Holland. There is no mention of a wound later in Belgium during the attack on Foy. Others cite the fact that Richard Winters and other veterans featured in Band of Brothers believed Dike had frozen up at Foy. This, of course, prompts the rebuttal that not all of the men were physically close to Dike during the assault, including Winters, who was the XO of 2nd Battalion at the time and was observing the assault at a distance from a command position. They also argue that these same men didn't like Dike and might have assumed he stopped fighting because he panicked instead of having seen him get shot. In the end, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that the real Norman Dike did in fact panic and freeze up at Foy. Okay, but then what are we actually criticizing? To summarize one commenter, we're complaining that a man who volunteered to fight in the war, jumped from a plane into combat twice, earned 2 Bronze Stars, and received 2 Purple Hearts, didn't charge directly into a barrage of machine gun and sniper fire, along with pre-sighted artillery, from an enemy in a heavily fortified position in broad daylight in the middle of winter as efficiently as we would have liked him to, as we sit on our couches enjoying the freedom his sacrifice afforded us. While at the same time, the bulk of that opinion is based on a dramatization of real events in a miniseries that intentionally fictionalized Dike to be one of its antagonists. At the end of the day, if there's anything that's certain, it's that Norman Dike deserved better than his depiction in Band of Brothers. Conveniently, men like Norman Dike, Herbert Sobel, and Roy Cobb, who were all portrayed as heels in the series, were not alive to defend themselves and take issue with the inaccuracies with regard to their depictions. Yes, Norman Dike had his flaws, like all men do, and we can be fairly certain that he lacked strong leadership abilities, but he deserves to be remembered and honored for the entirety of his service, not have his legacy cherry-picked, reshaped, and fictionalized so that he could be a scapegoat to make other characters in a miniseries look better. If you want to learn more about the true stories of other Easy Company veterans like Herbert Sobel and Albert Blythe, who are also significantly misrepresented in the series, check out the videos linked on the screen. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Anchors away, my friends.